Every year, on the third Tuesday in September, the world's attention turns to New York City as leaders descend on UN headquarters for the General Assembly's annual debate. But what is the UN General Assembly, better known as the UNGA or UNGA, and why all the buzz in September?
So the high-level week brings together leaders from around the world for this annual debate, and it's an opportunity for countries, powerful and not so powerful, big and small, to stand on the world stage and talk about the issues that matter to their governments and to their people, like climate change, like sustainable development, like COVID, or conflicts in their region. And it's also an important opportunity for leaders to meet formally and informally in New York, and sometimes breakthroughs can happen from that kind of contact.
The UNGA is kind of like the world's parliament, with each of the 193 members of the UN represented by one vote. The Assembly's president rotates each year and is elected by UNGA members. UNGA discusses and debates issues, makes recommendations to the more powerful UN Security Council, and elects the rotating non-permanent members to the Security Council. It also has the power to censure states that violate the principles of the UN Charter, as in 1974, when the UNGA suspended South Africa for its practice of apartheid, or in 2012, when the UNGA denounced Syria for the human rights abuses committed since the start of the Civil War. And remember the Millennium Development Goals, later replaced by the Sustainable Development Goals? Those were put forward by the UNGA. Part of the reason why UNGA gets so much attention every September is because it draws presidents, prime ministers, and other world leaders, all of whom have the opportunity to give a speech. Usually leaders speak for about 15 minutes, but there have been some notable exceptions, including Fidel Castro's record of 269 minutes in 1960. While world leaders dominate the big stage, there are also plenty of important issues being hashed out on the sidelines.
So the side events are important, but there's so many of them. There's usually more than 100. And, with all the speeches going on in the General Assembly Hall, it's just so much to physically be at during that week. So sometimes they get a little bit lost in the noise of the main events. But they are really an important forum for different voices to come to the United Nations, from civil society, from the youth, from experts in different fields, and from survivors. And they get their voices heard by policymakers and diplomats, and that's important.
Often, the UNGA creates an opportunity for activists, celebrities, and politicians to bring attention to important issues. Like in 2021, when the South Korean boy band BTS kicked off the high-level gathering with a performance and speech about climate change, digital communities, vaccines, and the power of younger generations. And in 2019, when Greta Thunberg demanded that world leaders take action to cut emissions.
You are failing us, but the young people are starting to understand your betrayal. The eyes of all future generations are upon you. And if you choose to fail us, I say we will never forgive you.
For the journalists, it's the busiest week of their UN calendar year. And it's early hours till late nights and running around the building trying to chase diplomats and leaders and break news. We get between 1,000 and 2,000 journalists in a typical year coming from around the world with their presidents and their prime ministers, and separately covering all the events at headquarters. So it's a big reunion for some of us journalists. We see reporters we haven't seen for a really long time, which is nice, but it's also a really, really hectic week for reporters, toiling from early hours to late at night, processing all those words those leaders say.